Hare Krishna. I'm Namita Purohit. Welcome to texts chapters 13 and 14 of the Bhagavad Gita overview. I think you all have been really fantastic, showing up every day and hopefully reading the chapters also and reading His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada's purports as well, because there is a lot that Srila Prabhupada has given over there for our guidance. And I humbly request you to read that because his words, the words of a pure devotee of the Lord, are very powerful. And just through his Vani, he uplifts us in our Krishna consciousness, in our surrender to the Lord, in our commitment to greater activities in transcendental consciousness versus material consciousness. I'm Namita Purohit. I'm a professional life coach. I run a company uh, where we offer leadership coaching, life coaching, narcissistic abuse recovery coaching. We also offer coach certification programs, and I base all of that on the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam and Western psychology as well. And I have learned a lot from my teachers, and whatever I'm able to share now, today, and all of these days, and always has been by the grace and the mercy of my teachers and my parents. Uh, Today, we're going to cover chapters 13 and 14. We are reading from Srila Prabhupada's purports and translations, his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita as it is. And we're referring to Gauranga Priya Prabhu's notes and all the acharyas and all their lectures, etc., whatever I've heard in my life so far. So here we go. We've covered 12 chapters and now we've got 13 to 18 to go. And today we'll do 13 and 14. 15th there is a recording already in the playlist which you can catch up with. And then tomorrow we'll do 16, 17, and 18. Do a little quick pass tomorrow. It's a lot, but we'll do a quick pass. Because 31st, I don't know how many of you would show up. So this is how we'll do it. And the last section is considered as the Jnana section. So first to 6 is Karma Yoga, 6 to 12 is Bhakti Yoga, and then 13 to 18 is considered as Jnana Yoga. But in actuality, the entire Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti Yoga. Krishna is teaching us how to come to Him. And karma without Bhakti Yoga is useless. And jnana without Bhakti Yoga also is useless. And we will read more about that in the 13th chapter today. And therefore, the entire Bhagavad Gita is Bhakti Yoga. But the first 6 chapters teach us the art of working for the pleasure of Krishna. And we get cleared by Arjuna's questions, even our own doubts get clarified. And then these last 6 chapters is Jnana Yoga, but it is the Jnana that is necessary to uplift us in our spiritual consciousness, in our surrender to Krishna, in our surrender to the divine. Yes. So that is the meaning. So karma plus jnana, bhakti yoga. So this jnana is also there so that we can be uplifted in our Krishna consciousness. We can be uplifted in our transcendental consciousness, in our seva to Krishna, have a clear realization of the nature of the material world, the nature of the spiritual world, Krishna, ourselves, our activities, karma, and all of these different concepts. So here we go, and I'll start sharing screen now with all of you. Here is this. No, this one. Okay, so here we are, and we have presentation mode coming on very quickly. And these are some slides I made in 2016 or 2017, maybe, when I was teaching at Open Pathshala. Rahul had invited me to speak at Open Pathshala and teach the Bhagavad Gita and give an overview, and that's where I did it. And then I did it a lot of few cycles in Mumbai, in person, live. And then of course I started traveling, and all those people who attended these Bhagavad Gita overviews, they kept telling me that I should do this more often. At least one of them was very consistent and persistent, but I never found the time. But I'm happy that we're able to do this together and read this together, so that there is the recording, and then many more people can benefit. Us together are benefiting, and those who hear later on also. So here we go, chapters 13 and 14 of the Bhagavad Gita, and we start, right? So the connection between the Bhakti and the Jnana section, as we're entering into a new section now, is in text 7. Krishna says that he promises to save his devotees from the path of birth and death, right? And then chapters 13 to 18, Krishna fulfills this promise of how he can save devotees from the path of birth and death by sharing the knowledge by which they can extricate themselves out of the material world. Yes. And we have already covered the remaining in the green sections. There are 5 sections in this chapter. The first 7 are Arjuna's 6 questions and answers by Krishna to 2 of them, Kshetra and Kshetragna. Then, okay, I think third, fourth, fifth questions also. Then 8 to 12, Krishna explains the process of knowledge, how to gain this transcendental knowledge. What is the process? He touched upon that in the 4th chapter, explained a lot of details. And here we're going to get even more details from 8 to 12. And then from 13 to 19, Krishna explains who is the object of this knowledge. What is the purpose of this knowledge? Is it just like to create a higher standard of material advancement? To increase our enjoyment, to increase the number of purses and bags and branded items and beautiful houses and beautiful things that we need? Or why do we learn this knowledge? So that we can attain Krishna, go to Krishna. So Krishna addresses the 6th question. And then from 20 to 26, Krishna explains Prakriti, Purusha, and their union. Again, goes deeper into the first and the second questions, answers to that. And then Jnana Chakshu, how we need to develop and see the world around us with the vision of this knowledge, and how such a person acts and works, right? And in the 14th chapter, then Krishna talks about the modes of material nature, and how the 13th and the 14th chapter in full action about what the living entity and their activities are and how they get entangled in the process to come out of it is very beautifully explained in the Purushottam Yoga, the 15th chapter. That's all of 20 shlokas there, right? But it's important to understand the 13th and 14th chapter so that the 15th chapter can hit you really, really hard. Okay. So here we go. And we're now on the 13th chapter, the first section. And Arjuna, he asks 6 questions in texts 1 and 2. And he asks Krishna, "Oh Krishna, tell me what is Prakriti? Who is Purusha? What is Kshetra? What is Kshetragna? What is Jnana? And what is Gyeyam?" Right? So Prakriti is material nature. Purusha is who's the ultimate enjoyer of matter. Who is the enjoyer? Yes. Kshetra, the field in which one can act within the material world. Kshetragna, the knower of the field of the material world. And Jnana, the knowledge and the process of acquiring knowledge. Just what is knowledge is not enough. We have to know how to acquire knowledge also. Right? And then Gyeyam, who is the object of this knowledge? So Krishna explains the field of activities and the knower of the field from 2 and 7. And he answers the 3rd, 4th, and 5th questions from 2 to 7. Correct? Now, what is Kshetragna and what is Kshetra? Yeah, so let's first talk about Kshetragna, right? Now, understanding reality means knowing what is the difference between spirit and matter and where are you positioned and what are you attached to. That is reality. And then when you know reality, you can find a way to come out of that situation and get to the transcendental world, the Goloka Vrindavana, Krishna's abode. Yes? So Kshetragna, there are considered as, and there is this, I forget which Upanishad it is in, but it is there in one of the Upanishads where Kshetragna is described as Atma and Paramatma. So Krishna in the 2nd chapter has always told us that we are eternal and we will always have our identity. We are never going to merge into anything, right? So the soul is your soul, my soul, and the super soul, the Lord. They both reside in the heart of the living entity. So it is your soul and the super soul, the Lord, the Kshirodakshai Vishnu, the super soul, the 4-handed standing form of Vishnu that we talked about, is always there in the heart. And Kshetragna are this Atma and Paramatma, the soul and the super soul. And they are both in one body, like 2 birds on one branch. And the super soul is the overseer, Upadrishta and Anumanta. You will read that in the 15th chapter of all the activities of the soul. So one bird is doing all the activities, the other bird is just watching, right? He's the overseer and permitter. And then we've also seen the process by which karma takes place in one of the chapters where the soul desires, the super soul sanctions, and the modes of material nature make it happen. So Kshetragna is the knower. There are two knowers, the soul and the super soul. And there are differences between the soul and the super soul, and we've covered that in the previous chapters with a full table. I have covered that with you. So I won't get into too much detail there. And Krishna, the difference, one major difference between the soul and the super soul is the soul is aware of their own body and feelings. Yes, the super soul. Because it's like, if for those of you who are, computer science engineers and you're into object oriented programming, then the super soul is 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 like, you have a class, the Lord, and then instances of the class are there multiple places. So super soul instances are there in various living entities, right? He's also there in each atom and the space between the atoms, and all of that, but he's there in the heart of every living entity. So this Kshetragna, this knowledge self, this Lord, the super soul, is aware of not just your body, but all the different bodies he is sitting in. He's aware of everything that is happening in everyone's body. You are just aware of your body and its happenings. But the super soul is greater. And he's the empowerer, overseer, permitter, and all of these things. Correct? Right? And what is knowledge? Knowledge is to know the field and its knowers. So, who are the knowers? The soul and the super soul. Now, what is this field? What is this field? The field is your body. The field is the identity that you have got, right? So, that is the field through which you express yourself and you do your things. It's like you have a football player in a football field. So, that football player can exhibit their activities only in that football field. Correct? So, for the soul, the Kshetragna, to live its nature and to engage in service and to engage in bhakti, it needs a body and the things connected to the body. The ego needs an identity to function in this material world. And that is the kshetra that we have. Now, if the footballer is separated from that field, what can that footballer do? Can do nothing. Usko bola, bhaiya, aapko humne club se nikal diya. You cannot play anymore in our team, in our club. Gone. What will that footballer do? The footballer needs a field of activity. And that field of activity at a larger level is the material world. And then at a closer to home level is your family, is your city, is your town, is your job, is your activity, and finally it is your body. So it is all the body and the things connected to the body. Yes? And what is the process of knowledge? The process of knowledge is the activities by which the soul gets knowledge beyond the limitations of the field of activities, right? And thus transcends this field of activities. Now, what has happened to us is we are completely entangled in the field of our activities, in our kshetra. We don't realize there is a higher place, a higher kshetra. So, the process of knowledge, you may be a doctor, you may be an engineer, you may be an MBA, you may be whatever, and be very proud of your knowledge, like we are. And you may have worked very hard and done everything. The point is, none of that knowledge that we have, none of the reels we watch, none of the Twitter feeds we read, none of the videos we watch, or whatever we watch and whatever we kind of expose ourselves to, is going to help us transcend, get a knowledge beyond this field of activities of ours, right? So the process of knowledge is that by which you are able to transcend this kshetra and go to the higher realm. And that is the process of knowledge and liberation that Krishna is talking about. And the beauty is that there are 4 shlokas over which Krishna explains this process of knowledge and liberation. And we will read it together. And the beauty is, it begins with humility. Amanitvam. This is the process of knowledge. It begins with humility, because unless we are humble, unless we realize we are supposed to learn, unless our glass is empty, unless we realize there is the Supreme Lord, there are spiritual masters who are there, and if we just do tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, they will guide us and we will be able to grow. And it's only to those who are humble that the higher truths are revealed by the Lord. Yes? So let's read text 8 to 12. Humility pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self realization, and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All these I declare to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. Yes. So, what is knowledge? All of these things. And apart from this thing, whatever we are trying to learn is ignorance. So, my engineering degree is ignorance. My MBA in finance, my international business is ignorance. My whatever else I have learned, whatever I did a marketing course, I did a that course, it's all ignorance. It's all in the mode of ignorance. That knowledge, because that knowledge does not help me transcend the modes of material nature. That knowledge does not help me get closer to Krishna. I just learn how to manipulate matter with that knowledge. It is not knowledge that is helping me get knowledge beyond the field of my activities. It is only the Bhagavad Gita and all our scriptures that help us get the knowledge beyond our field of activities and helps us transcend our field of activities. So are you with me so far? Do you follow? Say yes. Yes. Do you follow? Say yes. So the most important quality is humility, but even more important than that is approaching a bona fide spiritual master who is in a proper disciplic succession of one of the four bona fide sampradayas, the Sri Sampradaya, the Rudra Sampradaya, the yeah, so I am not very good at these kind of things, but the Kumara Sampradaya and the Brahma Sampradaya, right? All the four, and if I messed up something, please put the correction in the comments. Yes. So anyone coming as a in the disciplic succession of any of these four bona fide sampradayas and is properly following the teachings of their guru, their guru, their guru, and finally these four entities, Lakshmi, Brahma, Shiva, and Kumaras, are bona fide spiritual masters. Anyone outside of this is not bona fide spiritual masters. Also remember that. Okay? Because they are not coming in that disciplic succession, they're not in that constellation of gurus, the knowledge is not transferred properly, and therefore they're very, very careful who we learn from. Okay? And how do you test one your progress with this knowledge? Is you have humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, uh, steadiness, self-control, realizing want to come out of the cycle of birth, disease, old age, and death, etc. Right? And have a pessimistic view of the material life that we are living. We have a very optimistic view. नहीं नहीं ये करेंगे तो enjoyment हो जाएगा, वो करेंगे तो enjoyment हो जाएगा, ऐसा करेंगे तो enjoyment हो जाएगा. But we're still very optimistic. Instead of all the slaps of the material energy, the big, big boulders of material energy we've dealt with, we still try to find enjoyment over here. But through this knowledge, we have to develop a pessimistic view of the material world. This is not my place. I don't want to be here. Yes. And the best process to make your life present is to surrender to Krishna, gradually give up your material desires because the material desires are entangling and troublesome. We read in the second chapter. And then that brings us peace as we surrender to Krishna and serve him, take shelter of him, and be convinced that I am subordinate. And humility is the beginning of knowledge. So we have completed till texts, what is this, 8 to 12. And now we're looking at sections 13 to 19. Yes, good. Nice to see your comments there. Now, 13 to 19 is the object of knowledge, the super soul. So, what did we cover so far? We 6 questions. Krishna is answering Kshetragna, who the process of knowledge. What is the object of all this knowledge, right? And object of knowledge, Krishna has described in this last section, right? All these are declared to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be is ignorance. Now, who is the object of knowledge? Who is knowable? That's Arjuna's question. I think it's the fifth question. Yeah, the sixth question. Who is Gayam? Who is supposed to be known by this knowledge? Right? Who is knowable by this knowledge, right? So Gaya is knowable, right? The soul and the super soul are the real objects to be known, and especially the super soul. And once we know the super soul, then we're able to understand our relationship with him as soul, super soul. He's the master, we're the servants, and our duty is to engage, and our eternal object is to engage in loving devotional service unto him in an uninterrupted, unmotivated manner. Right? So 13 to 13 describes that the 13 describes the first object of knowledge is the soul. You, the living entity. This is spiritual, right? And when you understand who you are, you can really relish your life. Why do I say that? And why does Krishna say that? Why does Prabhupada say that? Because when you understand who you truly are, I am not Namita Purohit. Let me be very clear in my consciousness about that. I'm not this face. I am not this YouTube channel identity, or I'm not these social media profiles connected to Namita Purohit, or all these relationships connected to me, or all the achievements connected to me, Namita Purohit. I am none of that. I am a spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. When I truly know who I am, then I'll do the right thing. Otherwise, I'm a fool. Right? It's like you're being in a mental asylum. There's an example given by the Acharyas and Srila Prabhupada and many devotees is that you're in a mental asylum. You go to a mental asylum, and one guy stands up on the stage and goes like, "I'm Donald Trump, and I am coming for re-election, and I am going to be the president, and these are the policies I'm going to do." And he truly believes he's Donald Trump. What do you say? ये आदमी mental है, पागल है ये, भूल गया है कौन है. But you know what? आप और मैं भी मेंटल हैं. हम भूल गए हम कौन है. I am spirit soul. I am not Namita Purohit, and you are not. Whoever is attending the program, just instead of my name, replace it your name. You're a spirit soul with a spiritual identity. This identity you have is only connected to this body and the span you have in this body, this shiktra, right? Like the football player can play in one football field in Italy and then can go in another football field in Germany and play there also, right? Field is continuously changing, right? Similarly, our bodies are changing. So we can't just identify with something that's our body, right? So 13, 14 is the next, the most important person to be known is the super soul, correct? The Gayam, the object of knowledge. Okay. And I'm just trying to get the shlokas there for myself. Ah, where are we? 13, 14. Yes. Just give me a moment. Uh-huh. Right. And then everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads, and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists, pervading everything. So the soul and the super soul is pervading everything. Right? We saw that in when we did the ninth chapter. The super soul is there in every living entity's heart. He's there in each and every atom. He's there in the spaces between the atom. He's pervading everything. That's the super soul, right? And we cannot claim that we have hands and legs everywhere. We are pervading everything. The super soul can claim that. And the super soul is much higher than us. Yes. And the super soul is transcendental. More on this will come in the 15th chapter also, right? The super soul is not connected, is not entangled by this material nature. The super soul does not forget where he has come from, who he truly is. He's the Lord himself, right? Just even if he's there in the material nature and has pervaded everything to sustain everything for us, to support us, and has accompanied us as the super soul in every single lifetime. The difference between him and us is we identify with this Namita Purohit's body. The super soul does not identify with this body. The super soul never forgets his eternal true nature. He is always transcendental, can never get entangled by the modes of material nature, but the soul gets entangled by the modes of material nature. That's the difference, right? The Lord is not contaminated by the material energy. It's described in chapter 4, 6, and therefore the chapter 4 and Krishna explains Janma karma chime divyam evam yoveti tatpataha. One who understands my transcendental nature of my appearance and my activities, right, will not take birth again. And the super soul is all reconciling, correct? He is inside, he's outside of the living entities, he's there in the moving and the non-moving, animate and inanimate. and he's subtle, so he's beyond the power of the material senses. You can't capture him with your eyes and your ears, and right, you see the dhruva, and they meditate for so nicely, then the Lord appears in front of them, correct? And he's beyond the power of the material senses. We cannot see him or know him just like that. It is by pure bhakti we can. And although far, far away, he's still so near to all, correct? And although the super soul seems divided amongst all living entities, he's never divided. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate. So the Lord is complete. All his emanations that come out from him are complete. And even if the emanations come out from him, he still remains complete. 1 minus 1 is 1. Right? So the super soul has expanded everywhere. But still, the super soul is complete. The Lord is complete. The Lord has not lost his potency because super soul bahut sare ban gaye. No, that doesn't happen. And although he's maintaining us by being inside and outside and pervading everywhere, and it is understood that he is the one who is developing us all, correct? And then we discussed text 17 also, he's undivided. So this is Gyayam, the object of knowledge. And let's do a quick summary here. So Kshetra is the body and things connected to the body. Kshetragna is the soul and the super soul, who are the knowers, the true knowers. Gyayam is the object of knowledge, is to understand the soul and the super soul. Correct? That's the object of all that knowledge, process of knowledge. And Purusha is the super soul. So understanding reality means knowing matter, the spirit soul, and the supreme Lord in their proper perspective. So then Krishna explains from 20 to 26 the supreme Purusha. Anyway, before that, the supreme Purusha, the true enjoyer, is the Lord himself. We are just the enjoyed. Okay? That is something we have to understand. That the Lord is the supreme enjoyer and we are just the enjoyed. So we are here to serve the Lord out of gratitude, out of love, out of affection. And the Lord is the supreme enjoyer, the supreme benefactor of all sacrifices and of all our activities. So remember that. And then text 20 to 26, Krishna explains the connection between the material nature, Prakriti, Purusha, and their connection. Yes. And that's from text 20 to 26. You can read the verses at your leisure, but here we have some diagrammatic representations of the few verses, right? Now, the material nature and the living entities are both eternal. It's just that material nature manifests and unmanifests itself. And whatever changes you see are because of the forces of the products of the modes of material nature, the three gunas, as you can see here. And the Krishna is beyond the gunas, above the gunas, right? Now, nature is said to be the cause of all material causes and effects, whereas a living entity is the cause of various sufferings and enjoyments in this world. So, nature is the cause of all the material transformations that you see. But nature, material nature, is not the cause of your happiness and distress. We ourselves are the cause of our happiness and distress because of our activities and our desires and the karmas that we do. Yes, and the living entity in this material nature thus follows the ways of life, gets completely lost in the kshetra, completely forgets Krishna, completely forgets his own eternal spiritual nature, like this fool in the mental asylum, standing up and calling himself Donald Trump and giving a speech. That is how we all are. Yes, and this is why does this happen? Because we get contaminated, we get conditioned conditioned by the material nature. It's like air conditioner. You have air, goes through the air conditioner, becomes cool. Or air conditioner goes through, and if you've set the setting too hot, the air you get hot air. Yes. So the living entity gets conditioned by association with the material nature. And because they have forgotten themselves, forgotten Krishna, forgotten what real knowledge is, and have not cultivating, they get more and more conditioned and they create many, many bodies and many, many lives for themselves. And they create their own karma, as you can see in the black and white diagram there. And thus he meets with good and evil amongst various species. Okay? And then Krishna says that yet, so this is the material nature and the soul. This is how the soul gets entangled. I've talked about it, but we're going through the shlokas now. But yet in this body, there is another enjoyer, a transcendental enjoyer, the Purusha, who is the Lord, the overseer and the permitter. And he understands the philosophy, material nature, living entity, interaction. So basically the Lord is different from that, and one who can understand the difference, that Purusha is different, Prakriti is different, interaction of with the modes of material nature causes all these cause and effects. The living entity by their desire cause happiness and distress for themselves, and who knows there is a Purusha and how I am in the nature of Purusha, I am a part and parcel of Purusha. Such a person will attain liberation, right? Now, some can see the super soul within their hearts through meditation, like Kardama Muni, Dhruv Maharaj, others through the cultivation of knowledge, and still others by through working without fruitive desires. And again, there are those, although not conversant in spiritual knowledge, they just hear about the Supreme Lord from other people and they start worshipping Him. And because they have the tendency to hear from authorities, they have that humility, that submissiveness, and they're ready to learn from others. They also transcend the modes of material nature and part of birth and death, right? And bhakti, this is whether it's 25 or 26, the cultivation of bhakti is what will help you transcend the modes. Devi hesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya mame vaye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. Text 7 chapter text 14, that this material nature of mind, with the three modes of material nature, is very difficult to overcome. But one who understands me can transcend it. And understanding means understanding Him, understand who you are, understanding your connection with Him, which is of eternal service to Him. Yes. And then text 27 to 35, Krishna talks about Jnana Chakshu. So now when you have this knowledge, this Jnana, when you see everything in that knowledge, then you are able to distinguish between spirit and matter in all circumstances, right? All the time we're thinking like, oh, I am in a very abusive relationship. So I need to set boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. I need to stop this person from behaving like this with me. I need to do this. I need to do that, right? Okay, you need to do whatever you need to do to keep your body and mind, soul together so that you can grow in your spiritual life. But the thing is that I'm not saying don't do that, but what I'm saying is that even in that situation, an intelligent person can think that I'm thinking about this matter thing here, about how to stop this person, how to do this, how to do that, how to set a boundary. But there's a higher reality that I want to live in, which is my spiritual reality. And how can I use this situation to grow in my Krishna consciousness, to surrender more deeply to Krishna and go ahead? Yes. And then, um, you know, with this knowledge, the soul is also able to understand that the super soul has never left me. I have gone from one body to another, to another, to another. This super soul has always been with me. He's always been my friend. He's never left me. Can you imagine? All the time we are worried about, whether I have a friendship here or not, whether in this friendship, whether I have this relationship or not, whether I'm going to be abandoned or not, etc. There is one person who has never abandoned you, always with you, super soul. So why can't I just turn towards him and make friends with him and go deeper in my relationship with him? He's somebody who's never abandoned me, even if I have neglected him over millions of lifetimes, right? And then such a person with this knowledge can see the super soul present everywhere, and he sees that that all the activities are performed by the body actually, and the material nature, and the self does nothing apart from desiring. Yes. And one sees the living entity is completely different. Kshetragna is different from kshetra, like as different as oil and water. They don't mix. Yes. Now, one sees that the soul never mixes with the body and is transcendental and eternal. So, this is the Jnana Chakshusha, right? And you don't just see yourself, you also see all other living entities with that knowledge. So, having said this, we've completed the no, I see somebody saying our past life karma is making us feel like that. No, we can't blame it on our karma. We are choosing to feel like that. Finally, it is a choice we are making. It's not a force. And the more we think that we are, something is making us feel like that, something is making us happy, something is making us sad. My past life karma is making this, my planets are making me feel like this, my astrology, my karma, then we haven't taken responsibility. None of this is making you feel anything. You are choosing to get conditioned by all of those things. You're choosing to get influenced by all of those things because we are weak. And the way to strengthen ourselves is we have to take to the spiritual knowledge cultivate strong sadhana, and grow in our lives. We have to take charge of ourselves. We cannot say that I am subject to all of this. No, Krishna's, I mean, I've been sharing all of these solutions here for so long. And we have to take shelter of this transcendental knowledge, take shelter of the process of bhakti, and transcend this mindset that my past karma is making me feel like that. The planets are making me feel like that. That relationship is making me do this. That person is making me do this. My mindset, my childhood, my parenting. No, you can't blame anyone. We are choosing to act in that way. And when we take that responsibility, it is the beginning of your liberation. So let us all remember that. Next is we get to chapter 14, right? So I'm just taking a little bit of a water break here. Give me a second. Chapter 13 and 14, right? So chapter 13 is talking about how the Purusha is entangled in Prakriti due to his desire for enjoyment. The day you give up the desire, none of these forces are going to affect you. Chapter 14 talks about how this material energy binds the soul through the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance, as indicated in text 22. And the key verse connecting both these are text 22, which is Purusha Prakriti Sthohi Bhungte Prakriti Jan Guna Karana Guna Sangasya Sad Asad Yoni Janmashu. Right? The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of material nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. And chapter 14 is has 5 sections: the how the living entities can be liberated and how we are choosing to be conditioned. The modes bind the pure soul. How the modes bind the pure soul, text 5 to 9. Text 10 to 13, recognizing which mode, the supremacy, how they compete with one another, and which mode is working right now and which mode is more superior, and how even that is entangling for us. And text 14 and 18 is acting and dying within the modes. And text 19 to 27 is how to transcend the modes. And more details on the modes of material nature also comes in the chapters 17 and 18. And also how all of this works together, whatever is covered in 13 and 14, the beautiful summary and explanation is given in chapter 15. Okay. So text 1 to 4 is where Krishna is talking about the liberation and conditioning of the material of the living entities. How we get conditioned, how we choose to get conditioned. Yes. So then, so how are we choosing to get conditioned? That is the point. So Krishna glorifies the knowledge that he will speak now. He says that the total material substance is Brahman. Now he's talking about little process of creation. And many years ago, I had done many presentations on the process of creation, like a 1 hour presentation. Some slides here were there in the 9th chapter and also a little bit here. The total material substance is called as a Brahman, right? The Mahatattva. I think so. Yeah, it's been a long time. And as the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living entities, O son of Bharata. And it should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am Aham Bija Pratapita. I am the seed giving father. Okay. Now, how does he impregnate this Brahman with living entities? This is one of the slides from many years ago. I used to teach process of creation. Now, remember in the 9th chapter, I talked about many universes come out of the body of Vishnu. And so these circles that you see are the many universes. Now, why do they have layers? Because they're covered by the elements also. Because after they are released from the body of Vishnu, they enter the material nature, the Mahatattva. Okay. And then once they enter the Mahatattva, they acquire all the different elements, stick on the universes. And then these universes are there. Now, how are the living entities impregnated in this material nature? And I told you that Mahavishnu is lying down in the ocean. Now, all the souls who desire to enjoy in this material world, who have given up the spiritual world, who desire to enjoy in this material world, lie in the body of Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu, through his glance, which is carried by Shambhu, Lord Shiva, through his glance, because Mahavishnu or Vishnu does not directly get in contact with the material nature. It is through Lord Shiva, right? So Lord Shiva carries that glance and all the different living entities in that glance, and they are impregnated in these different universes. That is how we enter the different universes, right? And material nature is the mother, supplying the living entity with the body. Scorpio lays eggs in rice, but the rice is not the cause of the Scorpio. Similarly, material nature is the mother, but the living entities are coming from the Lord. So the jivas are transferred from Mahavishnu's body to the material nature. Through Lord Shiva carries that glance and the jivas along with their karma. Okay, and that is what Krishna is talking about in this 3 and 4. This is diagrammatic representation of that. Okay, now section 1 continuing 5 to 9. The modes bind the pure soul. Okay, so there are 3 modes of material nature: sattva gun, rajogun, and tamagun. Mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Correct? And sattva gun, so they are all conditioned and they are all binding. You may say, Arene, sattva should be good. But I'm saying no. Krishna is saying no, because that is also binding, and we will see how. So let's first go to ignorance. Tamasic pravritti. It is characterized by complete madness, right? They may not be in a mental asylum, but they may still be mad, right? They'll become lazy, very lazy. Dirgha suti. They'll have procrastination, very lazy. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to lift a finger. They just don't want to do anything. They want to complain about life, how life is bad. Even complaining and lamenting, complaining how my life has been so bad. That whole victim mindset is also in the tamasic pravritti, mode of ignorance. Sleeping unnecessary, too much sleeping, too much eating, hogging, eating the wrong kind of food, intoxication of all types, attraction to all the dark things, the dirty things, right? That's tamas. Better than that is Rajagun, because Rajagun at least has some activity. They have desires that they want to work towards and achieve. So there is some action there, right? But they have unlimited desires. They are disturbed by unlimited desires, and there's too much hurry and worry to achieve those unlimited desires. And there's non-stop fruitive activities, right? I'll do this, so I get this. I'll do that, so I get that. If I do that, I'll get this. I'll do that, right? They're constantly thinking like that, and then every relationship of theirs, everything that they do is a transaction. What is in it for me? There's no duty consciousness in that platform. It's all about, what am I going to get out of this? What is in it for me? Now, such people actually get very frustrated in their relationships and frustrated in their attempts also. They may achieve a lot materially, but they're tired, uh, and they don't have a lot of true happiness. And Rajagun is also a lot of very strong attraction between men and women, sexual attraction. Yes. And this also binds, because this one binds you because of your own madness and ignorance. And you keep going down the material pole. Rajagun binds you because of all your fruitive activities. And Sattvagun is basically the platform of knowledge, the freedom from sins, conditioned by a sense of happiness that, wow, I have this knowledge. I am so great. I am superior. I'm so happy, right? Also, I have this knowledge. I'm so happy, and I'm so happy in this state. So I don't need to seek anything higher beyond this, which is connection with the Lord. Yes. And, you could have like narcissism even in Sattvagun, right? Because they may be spiritual, they may have all the knowledge, but they may still be narcissistic. Yes, so that's possible. So these are all binding, because this person is just so happy where he is in the mode of passion, or she is, sorry, in goodness. They don't want to go out of this material world, and they keep taking birth, death, old age, and disease. Same thing for Rajagun and Tamagun, they're all bound. Okay. Now there's constantly a race between the modes. Sometimes the mode of goodness is prominent, even in a day. defeating the modes of passion and ignorance. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance. And sometimes ignorance defeats goodness and passion. And in this way, there is always competition of supremacy. Now, you may have experienced that in your life, right? Some days you're like, "Ah, I'm just so lazy. I want to do nothing. I'm just a glutton." And then some days you're, "No, I want this. I want that." And then some days you're like, Om Shanti. I'm very happy. I have so much knowledge. I'm just so happy in my life. Everything is so nice and perfect. I don't need to do anything, right? Even in a day. And we go through these with a roller coaster of emotions. Now, as Krishna is basically telling that the effect of the modes are not constant on their influence upon the living entity. And according to our karma, our work, our association, our choice of food, choice of music, choice of people, places where we go, and so on, a particular mode becomes predominant within us. And Krishna indicates the awkwardness of the eternal, non changing soul's predicament within this constantly changing world. So the soul is actually eternal and spiritual by nature. But because the soul starts identifying with the material body, the soul gets so bewildered with these constantly changing modes, right? And therefore, Prabhupada writes down that one who is actually intent on advancing in Krishna consciousness, in spiritual consciousness, has to transcend these modes. And the modes are constantly struggling to dominate with each other, right? So there are some characteristics that are explained. Just give me a moment, please. Right? The working of the mode. So we also talked about the binding force for mode of goodness is happiness, satisfaction, knowledge, feeling superior. For mode of passion, it's attachment to fruitive activities, bounds by the rope of desire and attachment. And mode of ignorance is madness, indolence, and sleep. And the mode of goodness illuminates the gates of body with knowledge and it frees one from some sinful reactions. Mode of passion can be intense, unlimited desires and longings, great attachment, fruitive activities. Sounds so tiring. Mode of ignorance is delusion, illusion, darkness, madness, inertia. And what is the destination at the time of death? Krishna explains in 14:15. The mode of goodness people, they attain the pure higher planets of the higher, greater sages. Where they're sitting in meditation, they're Satyaloka, Apaloka, and they're doing things, right? Mode of passion, earthly planets, because that's what you want. You want things. And mode of ignorance, birth in lower species. More details on that come in the 15th chapter. And what is the results of action? Mode of goodness. Your actions are pure, the results are pure. You get more knowledge and you're elevated to Brahma Loka, Jana Loka. Mode of passion, there is misery, greed, and earthly planets. And mode of ignorance is foolishness, madness, illusion, life not just in the lower species, but life in the hellish planets. And what are the obstacles presented by each of these modes? Sattva guna, goodness. Basically, because you're so happy, such a happy soul, that you have no impetus to take up to spiritual life. You're just happy in your life, right? You're too happy and satisfied. And therefore, you don't feel any impetus to do what Krishna is saying to you. And it's hard to be humble. Why? Because I'm superior. I know how to be happy. I have knowledge, right? And hard to learn. Why? Because I already know. I already have the knowledge. Passion is can't give up the fruits. Why? Because they want to fulfill their unlimited desires. They're so busy. Their entire life looks like a slot machine. I put this, I get this. I put this, I get that. I put this, I get this. Constantly, that's how their life is. And they're so, well, I put this, I got so much. I put this, I got that much. Now where do I go? Now what do I do? How do I satisfy my material desires? And they're often willing to sin to fulfill their material desires, right? And ignorance, they're too deluded, too drunk, too dull to understand Krishna consciousness and his instructions, and too lazy to follow any process of bhakti, the steps and the given for bhakti, right? And any tapasya, any austerity. Now, how to transcend the modes is basically given in text 19 to 27. And you can read the shlokas there. The summary is that how to transcend the mode is the living entity, although Brahman in nature, we have the desire to lord it over material nature. We want to control, right? And this desire to enjoy makes us fall down. association with the modes makes us desire to dominate the material world in or enjoy the material world in different types of body. But when we engage in devotional service or bhakti, it puts us in a transcendental position, and the unlawful desire to control material nature is removed and attraction to Krishna is increased. So that is, let's read this shloka 22 to 25 and 26. We'll read together. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said basically how to transcend the modes, right? O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present or long for them when they disappear, right? Illumination is good mode of goodness, attachment is mode of passion, delusion is mode of ignorance, and one who is not hating or desiring them or is just neutral to them when they are present or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities. Lots of ups and downs happening in life. I'm not going to get connected to them. Remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active. The modes are active. It's not me. Let me not react to this. It's all the modes affecting Namita Purohit, but I am separate from Namita Purohit. It's not affecting me. Who is situated in the self, the soul, part and parcel of Krishna, eternal servant of Krishna, and regards alike happiness and distress, right? If I got it, great. If I didn't, great. If somebody respected me, great. If I didn't, they didn't, great. If somebody said 1 + 1 is 5, perfect. I'm not going to get entangled there. Who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye. We saw this in the 6th chapter. Who's equal towards the desirable and the undesirable, also in the 2nd chapter. Who is steady, situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of material nature. And one, how? One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman consciousness, where you have come to spiritual consciousness. And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is a constitution position of ultimate happiness. So this is Shuddha Sattva, transcendental mode of goodness. But it's not just goodness, but it's transcendental. It's connected to Krishna. It's beyond the modes of material nature. And it's everything is engaged in the service of Krishna. Right? So this is the science that we all need to follow to understand the modes and to transcend the modes. And let's look at, I think one of the shlokas is very beautiful. Let's see if we can chant it together. Text 26 is Mamcha yo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Second last verse. It's very beautiful. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So here we go. We have completed the 13th and 14th chapters summary overview today. I'm trying to just give you all a glimpse of introduction, structure, and how everything is structured so that when you read, it becomes easier to understand the flow. And it also creates some excitement in you because if I go verse by verse, it takes us a long time to finish. There are 700 shlokas. But if you finish something that's packed like a crash course of, you feel some sense of achievement. And at least one time I've gone through it. Now let me read it deeper the next time and go deeper and deeper and deeper every time. So thank you all for being here with me today. I'm Namita Purohit, and let us be very grateful to Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who has given us this Bhagavad Gita as it is, with such beautiful purports and explanations, and so many wonderful lectures by him, so that we can all take to following the Bhagavad Gita in our life. Not only has he given us the book, but he has also given us a spiritual atmosphere where we can follow the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita through the wonderful temples created by Srila Prabhupada's ISKCON, where we can go and we can learn and we can cultivate our spiritual consciousness and engage in acts of bhakti and go deeper in our knowledge and understanding and surrender in the beautiful spiritual atmosphere that's provided. There is also a virtual temple, which is the Hare Krishna TV. The backbone is Vaishnav Seva Prabhu. And through him, there is so much spiritual knowledge that is being given to us so that all our doubts can become taken care of and we can follow. Now, all we need to do, everything has been served on a platter to us. Everything in Bhakti also. All we need to do is to honor that platter and to accept it and to go further with it. So the desire is ours, the choice is ours, and at least one small choice we can make is before tomorrow, where we cover 16th, 17th, and 18th. Please complete reading till the 15th chapter. So today I've completed 13th and 14th. In the playlist, you will also see the 15th chapter. So complete that. Complete reading till the 15th chapter. At least the at least the translations. And then tomorrow, 16th, 17th, and 18th. Yes, Sangeeta ji, you're a very amazing inspiration. Hi, Namita. I'm all caught up and able to attend this live session today. I'm so glad that I will be able to finish Bhagavad Gita with you tomorrow. It has been an amazing experience and it has been amazing to follow your journey, Sangeeta ji. So, Sangeeta ji was busy with her work and then she was traveling. Then, when she was back on the way traveling, she bought internet on the phone and she completed hearing a lot of the sessions, um, completed it, and she also read it and she got all caught up in the last 5 days. And here today, she's attending the live session and she's all caught up. So she's such an inspiration for all of us. And maybe all follow in her footsteps. All glories to Sangeeta ji. And thank you, Ajay ji, also for your very kind comments. And as I said earlier, I remember you and all your questions from our Hare Krishna TV live shows. So it's amazing that you're making progress. And I'm grateful to all of you for showing up. And I request for your sincere prayers and blessings for me so that I can also make some steps in my surrender to Krishna and surrender to the teachings of my gurus and surrender to all of you and in my service to all of you. And thank you very much and Hare Krishna. Bye bye.